Hi there, Megan Thompson with Megan Thompson Coaching, and we're covering parenting a sensitive child and the common parenting phrase that children who feel better do better, and why following that phrase is setting you up to struggle when you're parenting a sensitive child who is stuck in the meltdown cycle. So here at MTC, we have helped parents of sensitive children break out of the daily meltdown cycle. These are kids who are melting down, throwing their body on the floor, having meltdowns lasting 5, 10, 60 minutes or more. And this meltdown can happen multiple times a day or multiple times a week. And if your child is over the age of 4, then it's incredibly important that you listen in, because that is not developmentally appropriate, even if your kid is highly sensitive. So let's make sure that we cover that. We've helped parents break out of this cycle in as little as 8 weeks, and we've helped over 350 families to date and counting. So when we think about being able to do that, eliminate that meltdown cycle, that means having your meltdown-free days, meltdown-free weeks consistently, and being able to do that repeatedly, and then also stretch that goal with growth, so much so that the meltdown cycle has been eliminated. There are a lot of factors to play into that for parents, right? I mean, if you come to us with multiple meltdowns a day, we've had families come to us with 20 meltdowns a day being a consistent experience in their home. And we've also had families who come to us where their child's having multiple meltdowns a week. So not daily, but outbursts are daily, or you're walking on eggshells and you're drained and exhausted because you never know when that meltdown's going to come. That's a trauma response as well. And so we help parents break out of this pattern. All right. And this can be relevant if your kid's 4, it could be relevant if your kid's 8. It's absolutely relevant if your kid is 11, even if they're going through puberty. Okay. And then also for shutdowns, we support parents in this dynamic as well. Your child might be internalizing the experience and imploding, we call it. So their emotions might be not visible for you at the surface. You might not be seeing aggression, hitting, kicking, screaming, throwing things, breaking things, etc. But instead you might be hearing statements like, I hate you, you're the worst, I'm the worst, I'm stupid, I'm a bad kid, you'd be better off without me. All of those awful, awful, heartbreaking things to hear from your child or your teen. And we help parents break out of that pattern as well. So parents who are parents of teens, we work with the teens and the parents directly together. And so when we think about being able to break out of this pattern for so many parents, being experts in this field, and especially in this particular problem, it's incredibly important that we know how to identify patterns in order to be good at what we do, right? So the pattern that we're going to be covering today is where positive parenting, or some might even consider this gentle parenting, can fall flat for parenting a sensitive child. And that's the one component that we hear from many parents, that when children feel better, they do better. And when you parent your sensitive child from that perspective, it can be incredibly stressful for you, because what you're missing is the fact that sensitive children struggle with generalizing a skill. So if all you're doing is breaking out of the pattern of negativity by just trying to encourage your child more, or to be more joyful yourself, you're only working on your own mindfulness or mindset or self-care or prayer or whatever it is that brings you joy in your own personal brain and your own personal heart, as a parent, that piece, while helpful and relevant for all parenting experiences, it is only one part of the puzzle for parenting a sensitive child. And so when you think about being able to investigate how the meltdown cycle is continuing in your household, you might see some shifts, especially some initial honeymoon phase shifts, where your sensitive child is starting to realize, oof, not every single thing upsets my parents. Not every single thing is a big a deal as it used to be for my parents. Great, now I can breathe. But what happens when a sensitive kid starts to observe from their parents that their parents aren't nitpicking anymore, or that their parents aren't stressed anymore. Sensitive kids still struggle with the insecurity of feeling like they can't solve the problem if they don't have the skills, because we teach this often to you in our show here. This highly sensitive kids need direct skill instruction. And that can't be the way that you lead the experience, right? So we have to talk about that, and the how of how your child is learning these skills is incredibly important, but we'll get to that later. So of course, highly sensitive kids want to feel better, right? This has a great ring to it. If you feel better, then you could potentially feel better about yourself, right? And if you feel better about yourself, then you might be more inclined to try new things, or to learn in a situation. And that's very important for you to notice the missing link again, which is the skill development gap that highly sensitive kids can struggle with consistently. And so you're still parenting your kid as if they're not highly sensitive, is if all you're doing is focusing on changing your emotional states in the home and how you handle your frustrations or your aggravations, or how you communicate your needs and get your needs met, right? So if you're stressed out and you start going to yoga, or you start taking going to your own therapy, or you start going to taking long walks and prioritizing exercise, etc., you might start to feel better yourself. So that leads to your child not necessarily walking on eggshells around you, or feeding off tension with you or a co-parent, or just in general, any other family dynamics going on in the home. But it still lends your child with the need to feel like they can solve problems and that they can feel better about themselves. And that's not covered when they're just witnessing you not yelling anymore, or as often, right? Or when they're just witnessing you not as anxious or as urgently rushed in the day, or things don't seem to stress you out as often. And so when we think about challenging this notion for parents of sensitive kids, it's really important to understand not only if you're doing this effectively, but what if you're doing this ineffectively? What if you're simply just trying to, paste a smile on your face and try to be more positive, right? And that can lead to toxic positivity, right? So you might have heard that trend before, which is basically just throwing your head in the sand and saying everything's fine, everything's amazing, it's going to be great, we're going to work it out, it'll be fun, we'll stop the problem in no time, right? And when that happens, and when parents are trying to increase positivity just by faking it till you make it, what happens in that experience is that you're actually still walking on eggshells. You're still trying to solve the problem by helping your kid be happy, when in reality, your child needs the skill set to manage their emotions, whether they're happy, sad, frustrated, surprised, scared, or any of the other experiences of emotions that your kid could be having. And so you're still not teaching your child to deal with negative, neutral, or other positive emotions, and instead just pretending that everything can be fine. And that in and of itself is invalidating for your sensitive child. They don't feel like you get how big a deal their emotions are. And when that happens consistently over time, your child also feels like they can't come to you when they are upset, because now, of course you stopped yelling and stopped getting so irritated, but they don't see that you're taking the gravity of the situation as seriously. And so they still doubt their ability to seek support from you, and that support will actually be helpful. And so this is important for you to notice as a parent of a sensitive kid, because sensitive kids are very aware of their surroundings. They are noticing those subtleties. They are easily overstimulated, which means that can cloud their interpretation of events. Okay, and so while if you take away the overstimulation, added stress piece, it doesn't mean that your kid is reading into circumstances differently when you twitch your eyebrow, but you're smiling, right? Your kid is going to pick up on that. And so it's important that you're not just kind of stuffing your emotions or pretending that everything's better. And trying to do that, because that can lead to some pretty significant passive parenting experiences where you're just giving in to your kids' needs. And we know for sensitive kids especially, but any child stuck in a meltdown, just giving them what they're asking for doesn't actually solve the meltdown, right? A tantrum is when a child is saying, I want what I want when I want it. And then you give them the thing. And then what do? They be quiet, and they quiet down. They say, thanks, you're the best. And then they skip away, right? But a child in a meltdown who's saying, I want what I want when I want it. You give them the thing that they're wanting, that they say they're wanting. And at that point it's no. And then they can't even make sensical words. There's no logicking going on in their brain. And so that can be incredibly stressful, because if you're in this meltdown experience with your sensitive kid, you'll notice pretty clearly, this isn't a tantrum. This isn't for attention. This isn't to get what they want. They are completely overloaded by not only sensory experiences, but also emotional experiences. And so while you might be decreasing the likelihood of that emotion getting tipped over the edge to full-blown meltdown mode, when you change the way that you talk to your kid and you change the way that you see the world, it doesn't mean that your kid's not going from 0 to 80 now. Sorry, if we're going, 0 to 100 with the meltdown being 100 in intensity, okay? Now your kid's going to 0 to 80. And so they don't tip over the edge of complete body discontrol, but that doesn't mean that your child is skillful in the experiences and knows how to emotionally manage big negative emotions. They're still feeling those big emotions at a high and intense and scary level, just not to the point where it's life-threateningly scary. And so the bottom line is supporting your child in this dynamic is important to notice that you still need to be actively teaching your child how to manage their feelings, and your kid needs to be able to tell you all of those emotions, and what's going on. And if you're constantly stuck in reassurance mode or Pollyanna-ing, if you will, and thinking everything's fine and dandy, your child's not going to be sharing with you that they're having challenges, because they'll be worried about crushing the mood, and struggling in that respect as well, because highly sensitive kids without the skills to advocate for their needs and to notice that it's not their job to keep their parents happy, are much more inclined to still feel like they are a burden and avoid asking for help. And so your child might bring up a couple of issues that's bothering them or that's on their mind, but it will still be important for you to observe that, being a highly sensitive kid, your kid's noticing 10, 20, 30 different issues throughout the day that they want to be able to feel empowered in, but they're only bringing to you the straw that broke the camel's back, or the major issue, but not the other confounding issues of their day. And so it's important for you to notice that that level of intensity that your child is keeping from sharing with you is still impacting their experience. And so it's important for you to not cherry pick alongside your child's choice to cherry pick what it is that's bothering them, because while that might carry the most weight, we don't know why. In these circumstances, when your child is venting or exploding, sharing with you why it carries so much weight. Could be the straw that broke the camel's back, or it could be the highest priority in their life right now. But without a system to understand how your child is emotionally experiencing life on a daily basis, and how to help your child decompress throughout the day to do that more effectively, you'll be stuck in your own reactive mode of only waiting until your kid tells you what's bothering them. And that in and of itself is the same reason why talk therapy doesn't work for sensitive kids and breaking out of the meltdown cycle. Neither does, let's play a game and call it play therapy. Therapy in the sense where the child is expected to give them the professional a rundown of what was going on in the week, and then actively solve a problem based on the flavor of the week, because all of that is still reactive. It doesn't break out of the pattern of teaching your child how to feel capable no matter the challenge, how to feel capable even when their challenges feel overwhelming, how to understand the catalyst for problems even moving into the overwhelmed category in the first place. And so the whole component of you walking on eggshells when you were angry and frustrated and kind of telling your kid they needed to get it together and that it was your way or the highway, you might have stopped some of those behaviors because you start to feel better about how you can handle problems. And so you stopped necessarily, I use the word nitpicking earlier, but, we could call it anxious urgency, trying to solve the problem, whatever it is, right? And so you might have changed your delivery of your feedback to your kid, but that was reactive, and in those circumstances, you were walking on eggshells because you didn't know when your kid was going to blow up. But perfectionism, and trying to keep everything happy and happy-go-lucky, and that whole Pollyanna perspective is still walking on eggshells. It just looks differently, okay? Because you're trying to keep your kid happy so that they don't feel sad, and that in and of itself is you're holding your breath and waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? So I'll try not to use so many cliches today, but hopefully we can kind of understand the experience that we're talking about in the metaphor. So when we think about being able to break out of this pattern, what you need to be working on, it's important for you to understand that when you see your child demonstrate a skill set, if you're not actively teaching them, but you're only changing the way that you talk to your child or the way that you relate to your child, then you run into a different issue, right? Which is wondering, how do I repeat this? And so your child hears and feels that level of skepticism from you when they do exhibit self-control, when they do exhibit a skill set that you'd never seen before. Because your automatic thought is this a fluke? Because I didn't teach him that. And if you've been following me for any number of shows here at this point, you've heard me say likely that you as the parent are the catalyst for change for highly sensitive kids. Highly sensitive kids learn best through their parent-child relationship. And so if you're not the one actively teaching your kid how to change their behavior, then your child's behavior changing isn't likely to be sustainable, okay? It is something that is more of a fluke than would be something that's systematic, because you are the parent and you're the one who needs to teach your child. And I speak to that because of Lewis's research, because of Elaine Aron's research, because of Marsha Linehan's research, and etc. I'm not here to just, and then also, like I said before, we've helped hundreds of families break out of this pattern. So at this point, there's plenty of data sets to support that understanding. That when you're breaking out of this pattern systematically, parents need to be the ones running the show, not the kid, not the kid's meltdowns, okay? And so that experience, your child is going to feed off of your skepticism, and that's going to increase your kid's capacity to have faith in themselves. And so that breaks you back to the whole first part of the sentence: when children feel better, they do better. No, they don't. When highly sensitive kids feel better, they still need help to make that sustainable. That's how the sentence should go. It's no longer catchy, but it's certainly real and based in fact. And so when we think about the bottom line and in parenting with a positive mindset, it's important for you to notice that it doesn't teach your kid to deal with disappointment when they feel it. It only teaches your child that they should feel happy more of the time. But if a kid doesn't know how to do that, then they're going to start to doubt themselves and feel crappy about themselves, and in layman's terms, that's the official clinical term, if you will. So the next piece that's important for you as a parent to understand is that when your child feels skeptical about their ability, you need to pay attention to that. That's a very clear sign that your child does not have the capacity to feel like they can generalize a skill, like they can translate, I can manage my emotions in this big event when sister tells me I can't play with her, or that it's, she's not going to watch the show I want to watch. And then I'll be able to respond to that effectively and safely, and then do the same thing when I go to recess with a kid and the kids want to play a game and I don't want to play it. And I want them to play a different game and they keep saying, no, tag, you're it. And I'm 9. And at this point I have a choice to go sulk in a corner, or find another group of friends, or play the game that all the rest of my friends are playing with. And my choice is the first one, right? To say, well, nobody wants to be my friend. Nobody wants to play with me. And rather than look at it creatively and decide, do I want to see if other people will play my game, or do I want to choose to play my game another time? Notice that will happen, because that's how life goes. We all get our turns usually when children play. And so now's the time to pick somebody else's turn, right? And so that that experience that a 9-year-old might have is important for your kid to to feel capable of. And to solve that problem, and let alone observing that at 4th grade, 5th grade, depending on when your kid is 9, 3rd grade even, late 3rd grade, your child might be pretty close to not engaging in recess activities anymore, not engaging in those outside activities anymore. If their go-to is to quit, then they might be focusing more on screen time as a way to feel capable, and because that's a world that they can manipulate. Now, with that being said, it leaves a lot for growth for your child, and a pretty big gap for your child when they can't have face-to-face conversations in an effective way because they're stuck with a screen on their mind. And so what we're doing is noticing how children are choosing to isolate and choosing to check out of the experience of growing out of their comfort zone when we think about parents who are just trying to help your child feel happy, trying to increase happiness for yourself so that your child as a result feels happy. And so the important piece around this is that your child's skill set then becomes dependent on your mood and your actions and their mood rather than their actions too. Okay. So we need to see that flexibility from a healthy, highly sensitive child who is functioning in the world and being raised to a healthy, high functioning young adult. We teach our clients to be able to support sensitive kids in exhibiting resilience and being able to notice, hey, if mommy's having a hard day today and she starts to use a short voice, kiddo can say, it's okay, mom, we all have tough days and I'm going to do this anyways. I'm going to work on XYZ and I'll be back. Versus saying, you never love me and you always hate me and I'll never be able to solve this problem and I quit and I leave, right? And that being the go-to if mom's not perfect, Stepford wife, mother looking figure, whatever that is, in terms of being this, perfect mom archetype. And if that's not the case, right, and you're being a human and you're humaning and you're raising your voice, and that's an uncommon thing for you and your family, then the experience isn't that your kid also like turns in lockstep and is just like, oh snap, mom's mad, I better do the thing, right? But that your child is able to feel afraid, to feel nervous when a parent is angry, and still figure out how they're going to solve their problem, whether that be with parent or without parent, but not in spite of parents' anger, because they're worried about the anger escalating and they're being parented through fear. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, resilience. Okay, we're not just talking about getting compliance through frustration or getting compliance through positivity at home or reassurance at home. We're talking about children being able to tolerate mom not being on her A game, and or parent, dad, etc., not being on their A game in a way that doesn't lead to parents always having to be on their A game. Okay. On the flip side, obviously it's not an excuse to like blow your top every time with parents. As a parent, it is part of your job to be an effective parent is to be in control of your emotions. You can teach your kid to do the same. But you don't just lead by example. And that's what we're talking about today is leading by example is only one part of the puzzle. So when we think about that, the dual responsibility of managing your kids' emotions, obviously, if you're not changing the way that you respond and you're not changing your strategy, and instead you're just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, there's no systematic way to break out of that pattern. And so it's very difficult for your child to experience trust in your consistency because you're not consistent. It's very hard to be consistent when you're reactive. And reactive means, okay, kiddo brought home a problem. They're being, they feel like they're being teased. The kids are leaving them out in recess. You find out it's because your child is only wanting to play a certain game and not willing to play a different game. So you start teaching your child how to assert their needs or how to discern whether or not kids are being flexible, or it's time for your child to be flexible. And what happens is your child stops thinking that you understand them, because in that dynamic, all you're doing is trying to make your kid feel happy at recess. And that's not the experience that your child needs to have. Your child needs to be able to look at a situation and feel creative when frustrated, not happy. Okay. And that's a completely different skill set that you as a parent need to develop, and so that they can then develop. So your child, that's what capability and change come about. Okay. That's what we talk about in terms of resourcefulness. So when you have a challenge, being able to feel capable of solving the problem, that's what being resourceful is, no matter the challenge in your life. And so if you need to be resourceful as a parent to fix any dynamic issues that you have in the household, and systematic issues you have in the household, it means you need to be able to look at the big picture, even if the current moment is very, very hard. And that's the experience of somebody who's committed to solve the problem, rather than somebody who's committed to just stay comfortable, which means they won't do hard things if it's uncomfortable. And that's where your child is stuck, right? It's hard for them to change if it's uncomfortable, because sensitive kids thrive off of routine. But if that routine is uncomfortable for them, it's still familiar. And familiarity is much more comfortable than unfamiliarity, right? So change is difficult. You're going to need support to turn this around. It is incredibly hard to parent a highly sensitive kid stuck in the meltdown cycle. And to do that on your own is, in my opinion, really, really ineffective. Because when we think about solving this problem, when your kiddo is melting down on a daily basis, day in and day out, you're exhausted, you're tired. And so when you're running that mental marathon on a daily basis, the only way that you're going to be able to break out of that pattern is by accepting support, accepting help, and taking that help, rather than trying to figure out on your own, or trying to ask questions from people who don't understand the whole dynamic. And that's the important piece around working with somebody who knows how to solve the problem, rather than someone who has just heard of the problem. Okay, so we have plenty of professionals who are learning more about the personality trait. Maybe they can speak to the 4 components of the personality trait, or at least just understand a little bit and reiterate what they find on Google. And it's also true that that's not somebody who's going to be an expert in breaking out of the daily meltdown cycle, because that is a higher level of expertise, and it requires a significant amount of experience to do that, because not all highly sensitive kids are stuck in the meltdown cycle. And that's a family dynamic issue. So if you have a professional that you're seeking support with, and they find, that they say that they understand the personality trait, and their go-to response is to work with your kid directly, that's a very clear indicator they don't understand the personality trait at all. And they don't understand the research behind the personality trait. So they might be able to intellectually say, oh yeah, sensitive people feel big feelings. Oh yeah, sensitive people are easily overstimulated. Okay, got it. Sensitive people notice small details. Okay, got it. So I'm going to go talk to your kid, and I'm going to use big, boisterous, playful language, and, be happy in that experience, and I'm going to help your kid feel happy. And then your kid's going to feel happy enough to give me the answer I'm looking for, and then I might tell you at the end of that session that your child is absolutely developmentally appropriate and emotionally healthy. And then you go home to 45-minute meltdowns, and you're like, what gives? So it's important for you to observe when you're going to break out of the meltdown cycle. You need to follow somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. They've been doing this for a very long time. And you need to listen to the system. The system is very clear for us here at MTC. For you to break out of this pattern, 4 things you need to do. You need to change the way that you respond to your child consistently and playfully and effectively from a place of noticing what they're capable of. Secondly, you need to be able to communicate with your child for them to grow, and you need to do that in a way that doesn't perpetuate shame, okay? And thirdly is you need to do this, and you need to give them specific feedback in a way that doesn't overwhelm them. So having them work on every single little thing that they need to do to develop in order to be a healthy, high-functioning adult is going to overwhelm your child. And so you need to be able to prioritize your intense experiences with your child in a way that also doesn't scapegoat them. Okay, so you have to take full responsibility that this is a family dynamic issue. That means that every single person in the family needs to be addressed with growth, and this needs to be tackled at a multifaceted approach. And so that requires an expert, because if you've got a family of 4, that means you as the parent need to have, if there's 2 parents involved, that means that both parents need to be working on both kids at the same time and shifting that dynamic at the same time. This is not a kid problem. This is not a one kid problem. When you're trying to solve the problem, you can't be looking at it from a perspective of what it would look like, how much time it would consume, how much money it would cost, how much work is involved to address a problem for one person. If you have a family of 4, you need to look at this from the level of all of what you'd be investing to change the dynamic for a family of 4. So that's 4 times what you were initially thinking in all avenues. And that's really important for you to understand how big of a problem this is. The size of the family impacts the size of the problem, and as well as the intensity of the level of meltdowns that you're dealing with. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's a heck of a lot easier to observe that changing the family dynamic means that you're going to change the lives of every single person in your family. And you can do that quickly with the right system. Does our system work for you? I don't know. We'd have to have a conversation. You got to book a call with our team, and we will figure it out. Okay, we'll have a clear look of where you're stuck in parenting your sensitive kid. We'll take a look at what challenges you're having consistently, and also where you're headed, and observe that and what your concerns are. And then we'll cover what your goals are and how you want to break out of those goals, and what your objective is as a family member stuck in this meltdown cycle. And if all of those challenges plus your goals match up with what we've helped families do repeatedly again and again, then we'll walk you through exactly how to break out of that pattern. And we'll do that on that same phone call, so that you don't have to wait any longer, because no one was put on this earth to be miserable, and you are included in that number of no one. And so what that means is that on that same phone call, you'll be able to get started with us right away, and you won't need to be waiting any longer than that. And it's also true that if we're not a fit, then we will tell you exactly what you need to do, what type of therapy you need to access, or what type of resources that you need to access, so that you don't leave that conversation wondering, now what? Okay, you know exactly what you need to do, and you can take action right away. And we're happy to have that conversation with you, because it's incredibly important for us here at MTC that we only serve the families that we know we can help. Broken promises or false promises is not something that we intend on creating for our clients, and our clients are very happy for that very reason. The only families that we work with are ones that we know how to help. And so that's where we have to have that free conversation with you, and we're happy to do so. So again, go ahead to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk, and meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk if you're parenting a teen and a high school age and up. And we are happy to speak with you about where you're stuck, and whether or not what we do is going to be the best fit solution for your family, so that you can turn it around immediately. I look forward to having that conversation and hearing